Good day there once again, viewers. This is your mate Kamikaze78 here, coming to you guys with some more Planetside 2 content. Today guys, we're going to be taking some time to do a weapon review on the NSX Naginata LMG, a weapon that I'd always intended to review but kinda neglected it over the years. But I figured that now would be as good a time as any to come in and get this review done, simply because, like the NS11A that we reviewed last time, you can get this gun for free on your account by redeeming a code in-game, which I've got on the screen right now for all of those interested. And with that, we're going to see a lot of new players using this gun, but it's also quirky as all hell, so I think right now a review is very much warranted. So, how are we going to do the review? Firstly, we're going to go over a quick TLDR of the weapon for those who don't have the time to sit through a 10-minute plus long weapon review, but for those who are interested in the more nitty and gritty stats, we'll firstly go over the weapon stats to see how this thing behaves on the field, followed by some strategy to best wrangle the thing into your playstyle, and then finally, we will get into the weapon attachment options to give you the best possible kit to run with in-game. But firstly, for those who are a bit more time constrained, let's get into the quick TLDR for the weapon. So, the Naginata, guys, is very much like Vegemite, and I know that only my Australian audience are going to get this reference, but you're either going to love it or you're going to hate it. It's as simple as that. It has some mechanics in here that make it a pretty attractive weapon to some, but also a big thorn in the foot for others. The main draw of the weapon above all else is the fact that if you're firing it while aiming down sights and stationary, it will lock to a maximum cone of fire of 0.6 while standing and 0.4 while crouched after the bloom reaches those points. It takes approximately 8 shots, I believe, for it to reach that while standing and 5 while crouched. Now, to paint those numbers into some form of perspective, the cone of fire that you can see on your screen right now is the NS7PW's hipfire cone of fire with a laser sight attached. This hipfire is renowned for being absolutely excellent. And this hipfire equates to 0.66 cone of fire, so while still and standing, your cone of fire will never breach this level of accuracy. In fact, it will be even just a little bit more accurate. You can see it's a pretty good deal overall, but when you start strafing with the weapon, things get messy pretty quickly. You can manipulate this to be quite workable by briefly standing still mid-burst to reset the cone of fire down to the maximum threshold, which makes the weapon unique in which how you move with it. This is the quirky part of the weapon I was talking about. It also features a rather quirky damage model that gives it just that little bit more potency out at medium ranges, which can't be ignored either. A lot will ask though, should I take this or the NS15M2, which is undeniably one of the most popular LMGs in the game right now and is the other Nanite Systems LMG available in the game. And I think it's honestly as simple as this. If you find yourself wanting to be more of a choke point holder, this is the weapon to go for. It comes with some amazing accuracy and can remain accurate for an entire magazine dump when you get the movement practices down packed. And it also comes with amazing medium range lethality when you compare it against its primary competitors. However, if you find yourself more on the aggressive side of things and you want to push more points and you want to remain the point of your squad, then the better movement and the better moving accuracy that comes from the NS15M2 is going to be the better way to go. But in all saying that, let's go get our teeth sunk into the stats for some context as to how this LMG is pieced together. Let's start off damage-wise. The Naginata opens up with a 150 maximum damage profile at the 10 meter mark and drops off to a minimum of 125 damage out at the 65 meter mark. Now, hang on a second. 150 maximum damage. That's a weird stat for an infantry weapon. Well, indeed it is, and it's also the stat that gives the Naginata its medium range potency. Now, I want to make one thing clear here. The weapon doesn't actually see itself gaining any realistic short-range buffs to damage with the 150 maximum damage. It doesn't cross any thresholds to lower its bullets to kill, henceforth not seeing much of an advantage in absolute close range. But it does, in fact, push out the range in which the weapon drops from a 7 shot kill to an 8 shot kill out to 25 meters, meaning that you're effectively getting the benefits of the 143 maximum damage profile that you would get on, say, an NS15M2, but it's going to keep that damage potency for an additional 15 meters. that cannot be dismissed at all. But anyway, let's say that we take the damage profile here and combine it with the fire rate of 659 rounds per minute, or 10.98 rounds per second. We find ourselves with a theoretical time to kill of 0.55 seconds at the 10 to 25 meter range, and 0.64 seconds at the 65 meter range, keeping in mind that these time to kill numbers are based on no damage modifiers coming into play, all body shots, and don't consider muzzle velocity or bullet travel time. Anyway, that's enough about the damage, let's move on to the handling. Now, recoil-wise, the weapon does feature a kick that is a little stronger than average, but is still manageable, with some half-decent horizontal shake that frankly can't get too far away from the center point of the burst, but still be prepared for some unwanted sway. For those interested in the actual numbers, we have a 0.6 degree vertical kick per shot with a 1.8 times first shot multiplier, which adds up to a rather savage first shot recoil of 1.08 degrees. The moral here? Long bursts are key. In addition, we have a horizontal recoil that sits at 0.16 degrees consistently and is governed by a recoil tolerance of 0.4 degrees, which means that the weapon will only kick twice in one direction horizontally before being forced back in the opposite direction. Which isn't too bad, but there is also here a small horizontal recoil angle that kicks into that will just move anywhere between negative 1.5 degrees to 1.5 degrees, which again isn't too bad, it's just a small annoyance. It's like getting the smallest piece of bark in your shoe when you're going out for a walk. It isn't the worst thing in the world, but Jesus Christ, it really annoys you. Anyway, I digress, let's get back onto things. As we know, the cone of fire is where things start to get pretty interesting. As we can see, the bloom between aiming down sights and hip firing is pretty much on par with what we see with other LMGs in the game, and in addition to that, the starting cone of fire accuracies here are actually worse than what the NS15 M2 offers out of the box. But regardless of these slight inaccuracies from the start of the burst, it's kind of all negated when you bring in the fact that there's a hard cap on cone of fire accuracy while you're firing and aiming down sights and stationary, and that just makes it all the more worth it. We're going to get into more of that a little bit later in the strategy. One thing to note here though, the hip fire accuracy? Yes, seriously, hip firing on this thing should be done as a last resort, in the sense that you and your enemy are so close to each other that your bodies are fusing thanks to the mystical powers of latency. Seriously, avoid using it when you can. As far as the rest of the weapon is concerned, we have ourselves a generous 90 round magazine that can actually be extended out to 135 rounds with an extended magazine attachment, and you also get a respective ammo pool of 450 rounds. To reload it, it's going to take you 3.2 seconds unless you empty the magazine, which will leave you with a 4.4 seconds reload time. Wrapping things up is a 490 meters per second muzzle velocity and a 0.5 times aiming down sights movement multiplier. And that right there are the building blocks that builds up the Naginata, and boy oh boy, did it take me a while to warm up to this weapon and find myself enjoying it. It's one of those weapons that has a playstyle and mechanics that sort of requires you to employ some behaviors that you wouldn't normally do to make the most of it, and it pretty much all revolves around this cone of fire and recoil. Let me explain a bit. As we've said before, the weapon's cone of fire when you're standing still, no matter how long you hold the trigger down for, will max out at 0.6 when standing or 0.4 when crouching, which, as we identified earlier by comparing it to the NS7 PDW's hip fire, which is renowned for being excellent, is pretty friggin' accurate. That means here that if you can control the recoil, you can dump a magazine with pretty much an unparalleled amount of accuracy. I don't think there's a single weapon in the game that can maintain this level of accuracy while dumping its entire magazine out in one go. Now, there's obviously that caveat here of, well, you know, in this game, you have to keep moving to survive, otherwise you're just going to become sniper food. So how do we get around that? Well, the weapon, as we know, has these maximum cone of fire values that it can't surpass when firing while stationary. So what you can do is that if you are moving around when firing the weapon and the cone of fire is getting all sloppy and your rounds are flying everywhere and it's all getting a bit, a bit desperate, you can actually stop moving mid-burst and the weapon will reset its cone of fire no matter how high you got it to while moving, back down to 0.6 if you're standing and 0.4 if you're crouching. So let's be practical about all this for a second. What is actually the main advantage to all this? It's quite simple. You can hold down the trigger between targets for as long as you like and still have the same amount of accuracy in the grand scheme of things if you move correctly. Hell, if you decide to take your finger off the trigger briefly between targets and start a new burst on a new target, you only really get 8 shots of rounds that are going to be more accurate than what it would have been if you just simply held down the trigger. If you held down the trigger with any other weapon indefinitely, the cone of fire would continue to bloom until it was becoming too inaccurate to deal with, and thus you would never score any kills. Your bullets would just be spraying all over the place, into the doorway, into the nearby ally, into the neighbor's dog. It wouldn't end up well. But again, with the Naginata, if you are able to move correctly, you can vomit bullets without interruption and without the cost of accuracy if you take small breaks in movement, not in trigger discipline, allowing you to maximize your crowd control capabilities unlike any other LMG in this game right now. The vertical pattern also helps to keep this more obvious, considering that fresh out of the box, the weapon does have some pretty nifty accuracy horizontally. As I said, it is annoying at times, but it isn't something that's going to throw you off, and the vertical recoil only becomes a real pain in the butt when you burst off and putting you up to that really strong first shot vertical kick. The weapon is designed to be held down for long bursts. It really is. So when you do get that movement down pat, the next thing you're going to want to focus on is taking that accuracy and making it count with headshots. The weapon's time to kill, as I'm sure you guys have noticed, is lackluster. Take the time with your shots and make the most of your magazine in those crowd control situations by going for those headshots to really lock down those choke points properly. It's hard for enemies to push you when you're mowing them down with excessively large magazine sizes and is firing stupidly accurately at their heads. And in general, guys, make sure that you aren't letting the magazine size get to your head. Take your time reloading the weapon and do your best to avoid the long reload time at all cost. The extra second could be the difference between you holding that point and your enemies actually flooding you with a crap ton of guys that you couldn't fight back against because you had an unnecessary extra second of reloading to do. I guess, guys, the Naginata, all things considered, is very much orientated towards choke point engagements, whether that be offensive or defensive choke point engagements. It's designed for you to find an angle, set up, and just send a constant stream of death downrange. In a way, it kind of handles like a pocket engineer AI turret in the way that it handles accuracy and maximum cone of fire, you know? And thanks to the emphasis on long bursts, I guess that is honestly the best way to look at this weapon. And on top of that, guys, don't really try and force this weapon into excessive long-range firefighting. The recoil pattern with the first shot multiplier and the requirement for bursting at ranges, plus the muzzle velocity, doesn't really support that kind of fighting here. If you're going to be doing a point hold though with your outfit mates or farming up a biolab angle, this thing is going to be right up your alley, and considering that those objectives are part of your everyday Planetside life, you really should have one of these in your arsenal. Thankfully, everyone can have one for free. So guys, with that, it's time we get into how we make the weapon better with some attachment options. The weapon can mount a 1x through to 4x optic, including a 1x IRNV, a compensator flash suppressor, forward grip, laser sight, dark light flashlight, extended magazines, soft point ammunition, and high velocity ammunition. And being completely honest, guys, the first thing you're going to want to pick up here with this gun is definitely a sight. I'm not going to lie, I hate the iron sights on this thing. I think they're one of the worst iron sights in the game available right now. Definitely bring about a sight. I recommend 1x through to 2x because going any further than that, you're going to see the weapon really start to struggle in those longer range engagements where the 3.4 and the 4x optics really start to shine. Next up, I would take a compensator just to help with that muzzle climb because, again, you are dealing with long bursts here and muzzle climb will be a problem as you will eventually run out of mousepad space. So, yeah, bring a compensator to help with that eventual muzzle climb, even if it is a bit more gradual over time. I would also definitely recommend bringing extended magazines to the party. Again, horizontal recoil here, it's an annoyance, but it's not going to be something that demands the use of a forward grip. The extended magazines really allow for you to double down on that choke point hold style of gameplay, and they will allow for you to avoid that unnecessary long reload a little bit more often. And last but not least, the ammo type. I would take soft point ammo. High velocity ammo helps in long range engagement, sure, but again, game, we don't want to push the weapon into those firefighting types. We want to keep things into a nice medium range area, and considering that the soft point ammunition does bump out the weapon's 7-shot kill range to 27 meters, I believe, it does help with those medium range engagements just that little bit more as well, and increases just your medium range potency that little bit further. But again, I would make this the last upgrade you do, because 2 meters is not the greatest difference in the world. The other attachments are a lot more critical. And ladies and gentlemen, with all that said, that wraps up once again another very long weapon review for a rather quirky weapon in Planetside 2. There was a lot to discuss here with the Naginata, and I hope you guys enjoyed today's video and got everything you needed out of it. If you have any more questions or tips and tricks, say you're a Naginata user and you've got tips and tricks to share with the community, leave it in the comment section down below, guys, for us to go through as well. If you guys enjoyed today's video, backhanding the like button would be greatly appreciated, and if you're new here, backhand that subscribe button, guys. I would really appreciate it. As per always, guys, my social media links are linked in the description down below, alongside my YouTube join, where you can join the membership program and support the channel a bit more directly. Once again, guys, hope you enjoyed today's video. Peace out, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Take care, guys. Have a good one.